How's it going, crypto surfers? My name is Z and you're watching Cryptide. Today we're going to talk about the Fibonacci Retracement tool. This is a really valuable tool for deciding on entry and exit points. It predicts the resistance and support levels of a chart even before they've been established by the price itself. It does this by using the Fibonacci pattern or the Fibonacci sequence. And if you're not quite familiar with this, I recommend you Wikipedia Fibonacci. It's really interesting. It's a pattern that shows up everywhere in nature. So it shows up in wave formations, in shells, in pineapples, and other plants. It's essentially a feedback equation that feeds back upon itself. So it influences its own activity as it produces different outcomes. So it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. It follows that same pattern that you see in the spiral of a shell, and it's useful for predicting trading. So it's important to remember that the market itself is a natural system built upon by communicating organisms, by a bunch of humans interacting with each other using a feedback situation of buys and sells. So we are looking at a natural system expressed through numbers represented by the shape of a chart. And because of that, we're able to lay the Fibonacci pattern over this shape, this chart, and then predict where the shape will go next. This video assumes some prior knowledge on the chart layout. So if you'd like to learn about how to set up the chart this way using these indicators, then check out my previous video on that. I also assume some information about TradingView itself. So check out my previous video on that if you're not quite familiar with this trading interface. But if you are, then let's jump straight into it. So let's grab the Fibonacci Retracement tool over here. You can also grab it from the drop-down menu. And what we're looking at here is Bitcoin Cash against Bitcoin on Bittrex. And now we're going to place the Fibonacci Retracement tool over our chart. A lot of people do a lot of different things to decide where the bottom and the top, or the 0 and the 1 of the retracement should be. You can see that I've indicated where I have decided to place this 0 and 1 here, just so it's a bit easier for this video. But I'd like to show you how I decided upon that. Some people say that you should always start the 0 at a certain point. For example, at the very lowest price, so the lowest wick, and then take the 1 to the very highest price, so the highest wick. And that's a set recipe for how to place it. Others people say that you should place it at the very bottom of this SMA, and the very top of it, or at the interaction point between these two SMAs and this one, or at the bottom of the candles and the top of the candles, whatever it may be. I like to be a bit more flexible, and I try to fit the Fibonacci to the chart rather than the chart to the Fibonacci, if that makes sense. So in this instance, what I did was, well, what I usually do to begin with is I turn off the candles and turn off the Ichimoku cloud. So we're just looking at the moving averages. I then place the 0 at the very bottom. It could also be placed here. That would make sense as well, but I found that this worked the best, and it's just a lot of trial and error to see what works. And then I stretched up to here and had a look to see what fits. And when I say what fits and how trial and error works, is that I'm trying to get the maximum number of interaction points that you can see highlighted in white circles, the maximum number of interaction points to hit the maximum number of Fibonacci levels. So you can see at this placement here, which I was quite happy with, there is all these little turns that have found support or resistance on these different Fibonacci levels. And the more of those I can get on the more fibs, the better. You'll notice that this Fibonacci level here doesn't have anything interacting with it. And you might think that's not a very good thing, but it's actually great. It's great news because this is the 0.5 fib, this is the 50%, and it's kind of a non-Fibonacci level. It is the level around which the chart oscillates, and it has significance, of course, because it's the central point, but it tends to not have a direct interaction as these other lines do. So you can see if we look in closer, the 77 SMA hits that number 1 perfectly, and hits that number 1 perfectly. And the 7 SMA bounces around on these fib levels really nicely. And what's really cool to see is that the 235 SMA, the longest SMA or the slowest moving one, has a really strong interaction with the Fibonacci. And for me, that kind of solidified my confidence in this Fibonacci retracement layout. So now the cool thing about this is once you've placed it at a certain point in the chart, and when I made this retracement, this was all the information that I had available to me. This was up to date. It was about mid-October and I made this retracement. But the cool thing about Fibonacci levels is if you get it right, once you get it right, you can drag it out throughout the rest of the chart and it will remain true ad infinitum. It will continue to ring true as the chart lives on. And so if we look at a few points, you can see that the top of the fifth wave of this pump went right to the top of my fib retracement. A couple of other interactions. I was able to make a trade here. When the price started dropping really fast, I wanted to catch the bounce. I noticed that it passed through this fib here, and I thought the next place it's going to hit is here. And I was able to get a 40% bounce trade out of that, which is really nice. I then made the call on the Discord channel. Check out Cryptide if you're not already a member. I made the call to jump in at around 0.15 at this level when I predicted the initial A wave would hit, or the secondary A wave really, and that was another 50% trade. Very cool. Now here I didn't quite get it correct. I said that the price would come down to this level here, so the C wave would form on the next Fibonacci down from the A wave, and I underestimated the depth of the C wave. But interestingly, on that prediction level, where that C wave hit and bounced, the candles went all the way down to here, 2 levels down, so I was about 20% off, which is, it kind of stings, but the price bounced back, which is good. But the 7 SMA actually bounced on that level, so it was a good lesson for me and a reminder that you have the intention of the chart, the energy of the chart, and that might be where you predict it to go, but the momentum of the chart can throw the movement of the price beyond that momentum as it turns around. It's like gravity. It pulls down and then bounces back. So I was able to predict the slower moving SMA, but that's not as valuable as being able to predict the price. So that was a small mistake there. And as we go along, if I turn off the candles again, you can see interaction point here, around here, kind of a bouncing in between. If I turn the candles on, then we'll see what happens. Not too close interaction, but pretty close. And it continues to be this way throughout the chart. Kind of not quite as tight interaction later on at these points here. But see this 235 SMA? It follows right along this Fibonacci line for quite a while. And that is much more significant than the smaller movements or the shorter movements of the tighter SMAs, the 7 and the 77. And as we come up to date here, you can see that there was a bit of resistance of the 7 SMA here, and now really nice support of the 7 SMA right on this number 1 fib after a cross through the 77 SMA. So we've got green through white and then a bounce support right on that number 1 Fibonacci level. And that is a really positive sign, and I am very bullish right now. And in the next video, I'll go over my prediction for Bitcoin Cash, how I expect it to travel on its way to that prediction as well, so we can get some intertrading. But I'm expecting Bitcoin Cash to do incredible things very soon. And if you've been following Cryptide at all, you'll know that we've been very bullish on Bitcoin Cash for a while, and I'd like to explain why in my next video. So I hope to see you over there, and I hope to see you on the Discord channel at Cryptide. So thanks for listening, and happy trading.